What would Paul have said if he had lived to see the fall of the temple in Jerusalem? Hi, everybody. I'm Robin Walsh. I'm part of the Bart Ehrman team and a scholar of New Testament and early Christianity. And I did a video a little while back talking about how we date the canonical Gospels. And I referenced the fall of the temple in 70 CE as it concerns Mark, and specifically Mark 13. And I talked in that video about how significant the fall of the temple must have been for the development of early Christianity for numerous reasons. In that other video, it was relevant for us not only because the gospel writers seem to indicate that they're aware that the temple has fallen, but also that the way Jesus is characterized in the gospels as a teacher and a wonder worker, his teachings and recommendations for how one is to live their life does not really require something like sacrifice at the temple. So although he himself goes to the temple as a good Jewish boy in the first century, because that is when the story is set, the temple is still standing. It's not like becoming part of the Jesus movement, according to Jesus, required temple sacrifice. So that's how I suggested we know that the Gospels are dated post-temple. I want to think about Paul and the temple, but also our scope of early Christianity in those terms again, because it does seem in that case that the fall of the temple was almost like a catalyst for the Gospels. It's almost as if that temple falling and the destruction of Jerusalem, because Jerusalem did lie in ruins for generations after that war, that was a moment at which it seemed to become clear to what was otherwise perhaps an apocalyptic movement that God did not come down to save his people, as someone like I think Paul would have predicted. So for the Gospels, this meant maybe we need to go back over Jesus's biography, go back over what he said and what he did. Maybe there are clues there for how to live our lives. But let's bracket that for a moment, because I already dealt with that in that previous video to some extent. But how does Paul encapsulate the same problem? So Paul, if you read his letters, does seem to have something of what we might call an apocalyptic worldview. And what I mean by this is that he does seem to have a sense that the world will end in some imminent time and some kind of imminent time frame. One example of this is in 1 Corinthians 15:51. He talks about how we're not going to fall asleep. And what he means by that is we're not going to die. Elsewhere, he talks about being snatched up bodily into the heavens. He talks about having bodies transformed into something spiritual, but the people in that case are still on earth, and he's imagining God's kingdom coming to earth. This is what Jesus Christ is there to do. He is going to be part of this process of a cosmic judgment of people on earth, as well as angels, demons, other kinds of intercessors. Jesus will come and judge these people, and God's kingdom will be brought on earth. I think that kingdom had something in Paul's mind to do with the Judean people, and therefore Jerusalem and Judea itself. And I think that the temple in his mind would stand as this holy symbol of God's kingdom on earth. And so if you are expecting the end time at any minute, and you are expecting that within your lifetime Christ will return, I'm more than certain that Paul would have been completely devastated and shocked that the Jewish war took place, which would have probably seemed like exactly the kind of scenario that you would expect Christ to come down and redeem his people and defeat the archons, the enemies, earthly enemies like the Romans, and usher in that kingdom. But instead, it didn't happen, and the temple falls. I don't think Paul lived to see this happen, but had he lived, what would he have said? Well, in his mission, which is usually the term we use for his letter writing campaign and his travels, talking to different groups and ecclesia around the ancient Mediterranean, he indicates in his letter to the Romans that he's headed to Rome and then to Spain. And it seems as though he feels like once he has completed that journey, that his task was more or less complete, that he knew that this was the trip, these were the trips he had to take, that this was the path he had to take in order to reach a certain number of Gentiles, of non-Jews, to alert them to this coming kingdom. And so I think he felt like he was near the end of his task. And I think that at that point, he would have been very surprised to see that things didn't turn out the way that he intended. But I would guess that he would say that perhaps then God's people did not show, and this includes the Gentiles he's grafted into the family tree of Abraham, did not show sufficient deference or proper practices or behaviors to warrant God's faithfulness in return. Or he would have thought that perhaps they didn't reach the right number of Gentiles to fulfill the Jewish prophecies for the return of the Messiah. That's what I suspect. This is actually an assignment I give my students often in class to see what they come up with. I'd be interested to hear what you come up with. If you want to go deeper into this topic or any of the subjects that I just covered, the Biblical Studies Academy is a great place to go. There are courses available there. You can learn at your own pace. You can also sign up for a 14-day free trial to check out what is there. So please check out bartehrman.com/BSA learning. That's bartehrman.com/BSA learning. Thank you.